That's a very, very tough act to follow. Henrik Lundqvist made another great save right there. And so on behalf of the Broadcasters Association, it's always my privilege to be here every year and to congratulate Mark on a wonderful career. I was like 6 or 7 years old when he started writing, so I've enjoyed his writing. In fact, we have a mutual friend that we'll talk about later on. I used to room with a guy named John Papanek, who worked at SI and enjoyed her work. And of course, he was on the dark side with basketball. So we used to have fights at the University of Michigan with John about what was the greater sport, and I knew I was right. So congratulations, Mark Mulvoy. Dan Rusanowsky, very interestingly, I think his parents appreciated the fact that he was a New Year's Eve baby. So they got that tax write-off that they loved. And naturally, grew up like a lot of us broadcasters, imitating some, listening to others, and dreaming of the day that they could work in the National Hockey League. And I know Dan had that passion and decided to do something about it after he was born in Milford, Connecticut, and was a guy who went to a very celebrated hockey school at St. Lawrence University, where a lot of people have come through and been extremely prominent in our hockey world, and that's where he got his start. And from 79 to 86, he worked with the team I always, as a college broadcaster, affectionately called the Larrys, but they're of course the Saints. And after that, getting an MBA, very educated young man. I think his parents must have said, you better have a plan B if you don't become a National Hockey League announcer. So he gets his MBA, but then he gets a big break and works in the American Hockey League, where two of his proteges went on to work in the National Hockey League as broadcasters, Steve Carroll in Anaheim, Nick Nixon in Los Angeles, who also were New Haven Nighthawks broadcasters. And so Dan followed in their footsteps very well, and then in what became the 22-team National Hockey League, there was a day in 1991 when the San Jose Sharks came into existence, and naturally, looking for a broadcaster, they found one of the best in Dan Rusanowsky. Because what happened at that time was, Dan, we're going to play in a place called Daly City. We're going to play in a place called the Cow Palace. Well, you know the Cow Palace. I mean, it was made famous for the San Francisco Warriors. I mean, if it was good enough for the NBA, it had to be good enough for the National Hockey League expansion team. Because Rick Barry played there, and Little Still Chamberlain played there, and Al Attles and Guy Rogers and all of these great NBA players. So you got to play that. Now the one problem was, if you were short like my friends Ray Ferraro and Dean Evison were, Evison, a former Shark, you couldn't see them on the near boards when they would skate off the ice, because we were probably at an angle that Danny will tell you about, was maybe about a 15-degree angle to the near boards, and you never saw anything from the near side. But I'm sure he didn't mind, because he got that break of a lifetime. And since 1991, this man has been the voice of the San Jose Sharks and has presented dignified, educational, and most importantly to many broadcasters, correct pronunciations of players' names. He was a stickler for that, for which I certainly commend him. So on behalf of the NHL Broadcasters Association, a couple of our selection committee members who are in the audience here, both Peter Maher of Calgary and Sam Rosen of New York Ranger fame, two of our committee members, to go along with Rick Peckham and Mike Lang and Jim Hewson. These people have collectively, along with Bob Miller out in Los Angeles, been on our committee to select the 2023 winner of the Foster Hewitt Memorial Award. It is my distinct pleasure to present it to Dan Rusanowsky. Did I pronounce that properly? Okay. There you go.
Thank you.
Excellent. You got it. Congratulations.
You did pronounce my name correctly. I want to congratulate Mark Mulroy today. I can tell you that my college has worked for many years. I have a copy of Bobby Orr, my name at home. Of course, I've read his great work about the Summit Series in 1972, which is a tremendous memory for me personally as well. I'd like to congratulate all of tonight's inductees in the Hockey Hall of Fame. They're all wonderfully deserving, great representatives of our game, but also especially to Mike Vernon, the former San Jose Shark, a special place in my heart, the great amount of memories we had together in San Jose. I'd like to thank my family and my friends who are here today. Most importantly, my wonderful wife, Karen, who not only is my biggest fan, but my greatest representative, and also someone who will bring me back to earth after this is all over. As I will tell her that this day, this Monday, is my favorite day, before Monday, Sunday is my favorite day, because that's the day to take the trash out. So I'll bring you back to earth moment next week. I'd like to thank also the NHL Broadcasters Association, the committee that selected me, Chuck, Sam, everybody else that's here. I respect and honor you guys so much and look up to you. You've been great mentors and friends to me, and now to be selected is just a tremendous honor. Hockey Hall of Fame, Manny, Kelly Massey, the entire group, you just made it such an easy weekend to be part of it on behalf of my family. Well, it's very interesting to see that as I look over the years that I've been with the San Jose Sharks and in professional sports and broadcasting hockey, various levels, how much interconnectivity there is. It goes back to October of 1971, when I was introduced to this unbelievable game. My mom's brother, my uncle, took me to Madison Square Garden and I got tickets to the game. It was the New York Rangers and Pittsburgh Penguins. It was a tie game, but it was an unbelievable experience for me to be introduced to this marvelous world. Sights and sounds, the sounds of trucks hitting the sticks, the ice getting shaped up by the skates. In the case of Madison Square Garden, ice track and a little bit of concrete too. And also being introduced to the idea of listening to a game on the radio. Because of course, all games are on television now, but all games are also still on the radio. Foster Hewitt started that in the 1920s. And I couldn't get tickets to games very often, so it was a real rarity to be able to go to an NHL or even an American hockey league game. And so I turned on my radio dial, and I twisted that dial and listened to the crackle of distant stations, out-of-town stores, an amazing world. It was my ticket to the greatest game in the world. And those sights and sounds were brought to life for me by some unbelievable broadcasters who I looked up to so much. And I enjoyed being in front of people, enjoyed presenting in front of people, and I had this dream that maybe one day I'd be able to broadcast games in the National Hockey League. I had absolutely no idea how that was going to happen. And so, as Chuck told you, I ended up picking a school that had a great hockey team, great academic tradition, and a radio station. And I figured that was probably going to be the quickest way I was going to get somewhere. So I would go to one of these big broadcasting factories and produce so many great announcers I might not get on the air until I was a senior in college. And as it turned out, I met a man named Bob Biles, who was the play-by-play announcer at the time. And he told me that I might need somebody to fill in for me later this year, and I wanted to practice on tape and be spacing the booth and heaven. I thought it was fantastic. And so he listened to a couple of my tapes, the first preseason games, and he said, I really think that you can do this. And he was the first person among many that started to tell me that they believed in me. And that was really important to me. It was very critical of that. And so about 2 weeks later, Harvard was in town. And it was the first intermission. And at the time, the games were on an NPR station, so we went over commercial. We'd go back to the station for 5 minutes. And then they would come back. And so Bob walked up to me and said, I've got a writer for the hockey news coming in here. And I need you to do the interview. And I was kind of shocked by what I said. Well, why don't you do the interview? He said, no, I have to go to the bathroom. I only have 3 minutes, so here's the microphone. how it all started. And from then on, I did a couple games color, and I did a couple of play-by-play games that year. A little bit more the next year. By the time I was a junior at St. Lawrence, I was doing all the games. It was on commercial radio by that time. And during that time, I had a very special individual who went to be here today, Brian Brown. Of course, I looked up to Brian so much that I have to apologize to his wife right now, because when I met him at the University Center, I basically took up probably 45 minutes of his time when he spent it with his daughter, so we were in the university there. But Brian was always so gracious. He was another person at the highest level of hockey who told me that he believed in me. And that was really important. He told me I should go to the NHL draft. So I got the training and went up to the NHL draft. And it was in Montreal, of course, at the Forum. And it was great cathedrals of hockey. I had a chance to call games, and I got to most of the original 6 buildings before they were replaced, which was special. And I remember I had no press pass, I had no information, nothing. And I walked up and I had a jacket, tie, and briefcase. That was my calling card. And I walked up to the security guard, they were letting people into the floor. And I said I was there to meet Don Wallace, who of course was a producer of Hockey Night in Canada. And he said, "See him there?" And I said, "Yes." Go ahead. So I got in. I met James McDonald that day, and Dave Todd, and a couple of other guys. I remember they were conducting the pool as to who was going to get drafted. And the big argument was whether Kurt Bragg was going to be drafted in the 3rd or 4th round. But through that experience, I started to get introduced to people in hockey, and professional hockey. And of course, at St. Lawrence, we had some really memorable runs in the NCAA playoffs. I remember a series against Wisconsin where they had Chris Chelios, Bruce Ryder, Pat Flatley, David Bailey, and we didn't have those guys. That's the way I describe it. But one of our assistant coaches, one of the people that I met there at St. Lawrence was someone who's here today too, Jamie Baker, who later would become intertwined with not only my broadcasting career as a player, but also as my broadcast partner for many years. I'm so happy that he's here today. Of course, Jamie scored that big goal against the Detroit Red Wings in Game 7, who cemented the Sharks as a franchise in 1994. Greatest single season turnaround, beat the Red Wings, who were the best team in the league. Sorry, Scotty. And of course, Scotty got that again for next year because we had a second round series against the Red Wings, which we call the tennis series. The reason why we call it the tennis series is the scores were 6-love, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. Sweet. And of course, Eagle Ariana went on. It's a big part of what's called Salmon Cups. But before we got there, I had to go to New Haven, Connecticut. And I shouldn't say it that way. I was very honored to go there. It was close to my hometown. And it was a place where a lot of people don't realize this, but the very first great youth hockey teams in the organization, youth hockey in the United States happened. That was the first national champion officially was from New Haven because of a couple of people that were part of that city. Lynn Patrick, New York Rangers, who coached their AHL team in New Haven, and Murray Murdoch was the coach at Yale University. And what was interesting about that was ones like Broadway plays, where they would have a preview run in New Haven before it got to New York. Hockey was having a preview run as well with the American Hockey League. The Nighthawks were there for 20 years. I had an unbelievable time there. Our assistant coach at St. Lawrence, Mark Morris, had played there. He introduced me to Roy Locker. Many of you remember him as the president of the Ottawa Senators. And he was the one who hired me and said that I had a chance. He also challenged me to be my best and to always look to get better. And I always appreciated that opportunity. And of course, New Haven was another place, as Chuck was telling me, where we had 3 broadcasters of radio in the NHL in California, and all of us had spent 1 year there, including Nick Nixon, who is an honoree here as the Foster Hewitt Award winner. So we had connections to that. During those years, we went to the Calder Cup in 1989. They had Adam Graves, Bob Probert, Joe Murphy. So that was a 5-game series, and I always remember that. And between Game 4 and Game 5, I had actually a week off because the circus was in both towns. So it was almost like the old days in Madison Square Garden, where the circus took priority over hockey. But then came expansion. And of course, the Palais de Boeuf was Dennis Hall, my first broadcast partner called Cow Palace. Some really memorable times with some great people. As you know, the NHL wasn't as kind to expansion teams back in those days. So we had an 11-71 and 2 season back in 92-93, our second year. And that particular day, we went to Calgary one time, and the Sharks just opened up in November with 10-1 and 10-2 loss before getting back on the winning track this month. I tell all these in-quotes kids, and hey, you guys haven't seen anything yet. I was doing about 55 of those games by myself back in those days. We had a game up in Calgary. George Kingston said it was, hey, listen, we know that this is not good. We're going to forget about our record. We're going to have a couple of days of great practice. We're going to go to Calgary and just 0-0 for the rest of the year. The reason why I said that was because the Sharks had lost 15 straight games and were 2 away from tying the all-time NHL record, right? So we go to Calgary, and Joe Garden scored a goal, and they get 1-0 San Jose. And I said, wow, George's strategy working really well here. Final score was 13-1, Calgary. Couple of notes. Theron Fleury set an NHL record that day in +9. And Jeff Reese was the goaltender who set a record with 3 assists. Think of that, goal with 3 assists. That was something. The next game we went had Edmonton, the team lost 6-0. So 2 games, 19-1, just tied the NHL record. Go to Winnipeg, the old Jets and the old arena. And Doug Wilson, our captain, later became our GM. His career ended in the first period, 10 minutes in. So we thought it was going to be guaranteed that the record would be broken. But as they say, they had another thing in mind, and the Sharks ended up winning that game. And I wasn't there, but I'm told that the guys at the end of the night in the locker room grabbed the garbage can and carried it around. We've had some miraculous times in San Jose to see hockey develop in California. And as I told Gary Bettman a couple of times, there are more people in California than there are in Canada, so it's a good thing to try to promote the game there as much as possible. And he agreed. I've had a chance to call some amazing games, not only that unbelievable series against Detroit in 1994, but that particular year, Bob Airy, our captain, wrote a list of 16 things to think about when we were in the Stanley Cup playoffs, one for each win that you need to get the Stanley Cup championship. And one of the things that he wrote was you're never out of your game. Never. And he wrote down, you might see a 5-minute major penalty call. You can score a lot of goals in those 5 minutes. So even if you're down by a lot, something could happen. Well, that was 1994. In 2019, San Jose Sharks were down, Game 7, 3-0 to Vegas. You should know it. 5-minute major penalty call. The Sharks come back and have an unbelievable finish with a goal by Barkley going overtime. That's one of my greatest thrills. Of course, going to the Stanley Cup final against Pittsburgh, calling a couple of victories. The Sharks were 2 wins away from winning the Stanley Cup. And that is an amazing thrill. Even to see the Stanley Cup presented in Northern California, albeit to Sidney Crosby and the Penguins. There were a lot of people that said, in the beginning, somebody said, well, the Sharks will be out of the playoffs race by Thanksgiving. And somebody said, which Thanksgiving? Canadian or American? In other words, the first week of the year. But to see that happen, to be part of that journey, and to have so many people in San Jose put their arms around the game and see it grow, is really a great thrill for me. Also, I'd like to say that a lot of people say, well, the games are on television now. And so what about this radio thing? Well, my answer to that is that is a ticket. A radio broadcast, or what we call it audio or radio, is still a very important client acquisition and client retention tool, to use some business terms. We get new people to really be excited about the game. And we also get people to maintain that love of the game through the excitement that we get. And the thing about it is that I only am part of the story. It's my emotions, it's my use of the language, it's my presentation that are part of that. But the other half of that is the imagination of the listener to create that picture. And so therefore, because it's so interestingly innovative, you have a very great relationship with the people that are fans of the game. And I can tell you that I appreciate the fans in San Jose so much. We've had great owners, George Gunn, pioneer in the game, Lester Patrick, the trophy winner, Kevin Compton, who's here so graciously with his wife Ayla to help me celebrate. And of course, our current owner, Hasso Blackman, became a fan of the Sharks, watching that series against Detroit in 1994 because he was such a fan of Igor Leonardo and Sergei Makarov. And so it's all intertwined and it's all together. And I have to say that being part of that is very special. And as Arthur Zerbe, one of our old goaltenders, used to say, every day that goes by is one day closer to the Sharks winning the first Stanley Cup. And that's what I'm looking forward to next as we continue. Once again, I thank everybody so much. I'm so in awe of all these people in this room and all the people who won the award before, whom I respect so deeply. I love this game. I love being part of it. It's a joy to be able to put on that headset every game and call all the action. And once again, we're going to create lots of new fans. And when the Sharks win their first Stanley Cup, we'll have quite a celebration. We're looking forward to that as well. Thanks a lot.